The ship moved slowly through the darkness of space, its metal body catching the light from distant stars. Inside the research vessel Harmony's Light, Dr. Kelvin Thross sat at his station and watched the screens in front of him. The data was interesting but not unusual. His team had been exploring this part of space for 3 months now, and they had found nothing dangerous. The Viridians were a peaceful people who loved learning about the universe. They had no weapons on their ship, because they had never needed them. For 10,000 years, their civilization had lived without war or violence. Dr. Thross felt proud of this fact as he recorded the day's findings. The alarm changed everything. A loud sound filled the bridge and red lights began flashing on every screen. Dr. Thross looked up in confusion. The ship's sensors had detected something large approaching fast. Before he could react, the entire vessel shook violently. The lights flickered and went out for a moment. When they came back on, half the screens were dead. Something had hit them with a weapon. Dr. Thross felt his heart beating fast in his chest. His hands were shaking as he tried to understand what was happening. Captain Vexthor smiled as he watched the disabled ship on his view screen. The Viridians were always easy targets. They never fought back. They never even tried to run. They just sat there in their damaged ships waiting to be captured. This was why the Krathax loved hunting in this region of space. The peaceful species of the Galactic Union were weak and helpless. Captain Vexthor had been raiding ships for 20 years, and he had never lost a single battle. His crew of 400 warriors prepared their boarding equipment. Soon they would have another ship full of valuable prizes and slaves to sell. Dr. Thross tried to send a message to the Galactic Union, but the Krathax had already jammed most of their communications. He could feel panic rising in his throat. His people had no training for this. They were scientists, not soldiers. The other Viridians on the bridge looked at him with wide eyes, waiting for him to do something. But what could he do? Dr. Thross made a desperate choice. He activated the emergency beacon and set it to broadcast on all frequencies, not just the Union channels. Maybe someone out there would hear them. Maybe someone would come to help. He entered their coordinates and a simple message asking for rescue. Then he pressed the send button and hoped. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, moving in all directions. Most of the frequencies were empty. Some were monitored by automated systems that recorded the signal but did nothing else. But one frequency reached a place that Dr. Thross had never heard of. A small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, marked in the Galactic Union's secret files as Quarantine World 571C. The file said the planet was dangerous, and the inhabitants were hostile. No one from the Union was allowed to go there. No one was supposed to even talk about it. But the emergency beacon did not know about these rules. It just kept broadcasting. Lieutenant Kate Morrison was drinking coffee when the alert came through. She was working the night shift at Titan Watch, Earth's main orbital defense station. Most nights were quiet. She would sit at her console, monitor the standard channels, and think about what she would do when her shift ended. But tonight was different. Her screen showed an incoming signal on a frequency she had never seen used before. Kate sat up straight and put down her coffee. The signal was weak but clear. Someone was calling for help. The message included coordinates, species identification, and a desperate plea for rescue. Kate ran the analysis program and felt her eyes go wide. The signal came from only 6 light hours away. That was practically next door in space terms. She called Captain Jake Peterson immediately. He arrived at her station within 2 minutes, his uniform jacket still unbuttoned. Jake was a good officer who had served in Earth's defense forces for 15 years. He had always wondered if humans would ever meet aliens. Now it seemed like that moment had arrived. He read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. An alien species was under attack near Earth's territory. This was exactly the kind of situation that Earth's government had prepared for, but hoped would never happen. Jake made the call to Earth Command and waited. Admiral Helen Carter was in a meeting when the priority message came through. She excused herself and read the report in the hallway outside the conference room. Her face remained calm, but her mind was racing. Earth had been monitoring space around their solar system for decades. They had detected signs of alien civilizations, but had always followed the protocols. Watch and learn. Do not reveal yourself until you understand what you are dealing with. But now the situation had changed. Someone was in trouble and they were asking for help. Admiral Carter knew that whatever she decided in the next few minutes would change human history forever. She called an emergency meeting with the Unified Command. 10 people appeared on her screen, the leaders of Earth's military and government. They argued for 30 minutes. Some wanted to ignore the signal and maintain secrecy. Others said that humans could not ignore people in danger. Admiral Carter listened to all of them and then made her decision. They would respond to the distress call. But they would not send a diplomatic ship or a science vessel. They would send a warship. If the situation was hostile, humanity needed to be ready. She authorized the deployment of the UNS Vengeance, one of Earth's stealth destroyers. The ship could fight if needed, but it could also remain hidden and gather information. Commander Lisa Grant was sleeping when the alert woke her. She read the orders on her personal screen and was dressed and on the bridge within 5 minutes. The crew of the Vengeance was already at their stations. They had trained for years for a moment like this. Commander Grant sat in her captain's chair and looked at the faces around her. These were good people, smart and tough and ready for anything. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Alex Torres, was already running scenarios through the tactical computer. He looked up and gave her a small nod. They were ready. The Vengeance left Earth orbit 20 minutes later. The ship moved faster than light, traveling through space in a way that would have seemed like magic to people from earlier centuries. But to the crew it was just technology. They would reach the coordinates in the distress call within 6 hours. Commander Grant used that time to prepare. She studied everything Earth's computers knew about possible alien threats. She reviewed the weapon systems and made sure the medical bay was ready. She also thought about what she would say if they met aliens. How do you introduce your entire species to the galaxy? How do you explain humanity to beings who might be completely different? Back on the Harmony's Light, Dr. Thross and his crew were now prisoners. The Krathax had boarded their ship easily. The Viridians had tried to lock the doors, but the pirates had simply cut through them with energy weapons. Now all 23 crew members sat in their own cargo bay, their hands bound with metal restraints. The Krathax warriors walked among them, laughing and making jokes about how weak they were. Captain Vexthor had already begun cataloging everything valuable on the ship. The research data would sell well. The ship itself could be stripped for parts, and the Viridians would bring a good price in the slave markets. It was a successful raid just like all the others. Dr. Thross sat on the cold metal floor and tried not to cry. He had failed his crew. He had led them into danger, and now they would all suffer for it. The distress call had probably gone nowhere. No one would come to help them. The Krathax controlled this region of space because no one was strong enough to stop them. Dr. Thross closed his eyes and tried to remember his home world. The beautiful gardens and peaceful cities, the universities where he had studied for so many years, his family who were waiting for him to return. He wondered if he would ever see any of it again. The Vengeance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of an asteroid field. Commander Grant studied the scene through the ship's sensors. One large warship was connected to a smaller civilian vessel. The warship had weapons and shields that looked primitive by human standards but were probably dangerous enough. The civilian ship was clearly damaged. Thermal scans showed life signs on both vessels. The civilians were all gathered in one area, probably imprisoned. Commander Grant felt anger rising in her chest. Pirates. She had dealt with pirates before in Earth's oceans. They were the same everywhere, it seemed. People who took what they wanted and hurt others for profit. She activated the communication system. The ship's computer had already analyzed the distress call and figured out the language. It was different from anything on Earth, but the patterns were logical. The translation software could handle it. Commander Grant took a breath and spoke clearly into the microphone. She told the pirates to release their prisoners and surrender. She said that if they refused, they would face consequences. Then she waited for a response. The answer came quickly. Laughter. Mockery. The pirates could not even detect her ship on their sensors. They thought she was bluffing. One of them fired a weapon in the general direction of her transmission, trying to scare her off. Commander Grant looked at her tactical officer and gave a single order. Fire. The first railgun round moved through space faster than anything the Krathax had ever seen. It was just a piece of metal, but it was moving at nearly 1/10 the speed of light. When it hit the pirate ship's shields, those shields simply disappeared. The round punched through the hull and destroyed the main engine in less than a second. The entire warship shook like a toy being thrown by an angry child. Captain Vexthor was thrown from his chair and landed hard on the floor. His ears were ringing and he could not understand what had happened. They had been hit by something, but their sensors showed nothing out there. It was impossible. Commander Grant watched her screens carefully. The first shot had disabled the pirate ship's engines. Good. Now they could not run away. She ordered her tactical officer to continue firing. The next rounds were aimed at the weapon systems and communication arrays. Each shot was precise and calculated. The railguns fired again and again, and each time another part of the pirate ship stopped working. Plasma torpedoes followed, moving slower but carrying more explosive power. They hit the exact points where the ship's shields were generated. Within 47 seconds, the pirate warship was dead in space. It had no engines, no weapons, and no way to call for help. The Krathax crew sat in the dark, trying to understand how they had lost so quickly. Captain Vexthor pulled himself up using a broken console. Around him, his warriors were crying out in pain or fear. The ship's emergency lights gave everything a red glow. He tried to access the weapons controls, but nothing responded. He tried to check the sensors, but they were all offline. For the first time in his long career as a pirate, he felt real fear. Someone out there had weapons that were far beyond anything he had ever faced. Someone had just destroyed his ship without even appearing on his scanners. He wanted to run, but he could not. He wanted to fight, but he had nothing to fight with. All he could do was wait. On the Harmony's light, Dr. Thross heard the impacts and felt the vibrations through the hull. The Krathax guards in the cargo bay looked confused and frightened. One of them ran out to check what was happening. The others kept their weapons pointed at the Viridian prisoners, but their hands were shaking. Dr. Thross did not know what was going on, but he could tell that something had changed. Maybe his distress call had worked. Maybe someone had come to help them after all. He felt a small spark of hope in his chest. Lieutenant Commander Alex Torres stood in the deployment bay with 30 Marines. They were wearing powered armor that made them look bigger and stronger than normal humans. Each suit had weapons built into the arms and legs. The helmets had sensors that could see in the dark or through smoke. The armor could stop most small weapons and help the Marines move faster and hit harder. Torres checked his team one final time. They had trained for situations like this dozens of times. Hostage rescue on an enemy ship. Go in fast, secure the prisoners, neutralize any threats. They knew what to do. Torres gave the signal, and the deployment bay door opened to the vacuum of space. The Marines used small jets on their armor to fly across the distance between the two ships. They carried breaching charges that would cut through the pirate ship's hull. When they reached the warship, they placed the charges at key points and then moved away. The explosions were silent in the vacuum of space, but bright enough to hurt the eyes. Holes appeared in the hull and the Marines went through them quickly. Inside, the Krathax crew tried to respond, but they were too slow and too confused. The human Marines moved through the corridors with smooth efficiency, their armor's sensors showing them exactly where to go. The first Krathax warrior that Torres encountered tried to shoot him with an energy weapon. The shot hit his armor and bounced off, leaving just a small burn mark. Torres raised his own weapon and fired a single shot. The round hit the warrior in the shoulder and knocked him down. It was designed to stun rather than kill when possible. The warrior lay on the floor, conscious but unable to move. Torres and his team kept moving forward. They had studied the ship's layout using the Vengeance's sensors. They knew where the prisoners were being held. They also knew where the pirate crew would try to make a stand. Captain Vexthor gathered what was left of his crew near the bridge, maybe 50 warriors out of the 400 on board. The others were scattered throughout the ship, injured or unconscious or trying to hide. Vexthor knew they could not win this battle, but he refused to surrender. He had built his reputation on being tough and dangerous. If he gave up now, he would lose everything. Better to die fighting than live as a prisoner. He ordered his warriors to prepare for the enemy's arrival. They set up behind overturned furniture and broken equipment, their weapons pointing at the main corridor. When the attackers came, they would at least take some of them down. Torres saw the ambush before he reached it. His armor's sensors detected the heat signatures of the Krathax warriors hiding ahead. He signaled his team to stop and then tossed a small device down the corridor. It flew through the air and landed right in the middle of the pirate position. The device released a flash of light so bright that it blinded everyone looking at it. It also made a sound so loud that it hurt the ears and made it hard to think. The Krathax warriors cried out and covered their faces. Before they could recover, the human Marines were on them. Torres and his team moved with perfect coordination, disarming the pirates and securing them with restraints. The whole thing took less than 2 minutes. Captain Vexthor found himself face down on the floor with metal restraints on his wrists. He tried to fight, but something heavy was pressing on his back. He turned his head and saw one of the armored warriors standing over him. The armor was dark gray with blue markings. It looked like it had been designed for war. Through the helmet's visor, Vexthor could see eyes looking down at him. Human eyes. He had never seen a human before, but he knew what they were from the old files. The quarantine species. The ones from the Deathworld. The Galactic Union had kept them isolated for a reason. Now Vexthor understood why. Sergeant Amy Holland led a smaller team to the cargo bay where the prisoners were held. The door was locked, but her armor's tools made short work of it. When the door opened, she saw the Viridian scientists huddled together on the floor. They looked terrified. 3 Krathax guards stood between her and the prisoners, their weapons raised. Amy did not hesitate. She shot all 3 guards with stun rounds before they could react. They fell to the floor unconscious. Then she removed her helmet so the prisoners could see her face. She wanted them to know that she was there to help, not hurt them. Dr. Thross stared at the creature standing in the doorway. She was smaller than the Krathax, but something about her made him nervous. Her face was smooth and her eyes were forward-facing like a predator's. She moved with confidence and control. When she spoke, the universal translator on his collar rendered her words into his language. She told them they were safe now. She told them the pirates had been captured. She told them her name was Amy Holland and she was from Earth. Dr. Thross searched his memory for any mention of Earth but found nothing. These beings were unknown to the Galactic Union. That should have been impossible. How could an entire species exist without the Union knowing about them? Commander Grant boarded the Harmony's Light 2 hours later, after her Marines had secured both ships. She wanted to meet these aliens personally and explain what had happened. Lieutenant Torres escorted her to the cargo bay, where the Viridians were receiving medical attention from human medics. When Grant entered, all the aliens stopped what they were doing and looked at her. She could see fear in their eyes, but also curiosity. She walked slowly to the center of the room and introduced herself. She told them about Earth and humanity. She explained that they had received the distress call and come to help. She said that the pirates were now prisoners and would face justice. Dr. Thross listened to her words and felt his fear growing. This Commander Grant spoke of justice and helping others, but she had just destroyed a warship in less than a minute. Her soldiers had defeated 400 Krathax warriors without losing a single person. What kind of species could do that? He asked her the question that was burning in his mind. Where did humans come from? What kind of world produced such capable warriors? Commander Grant smiled, but it was a sad smile. She told him about Earth, a world with gravity higher than standard, an atmosphere rich in oxygen that would poison most species, weather systems that created massive storms, predators that made early humans band together just to survive, a history full of competition and conflict and the constant struggle to stay alive. Dr. Thross felt dizzy as he processed this information. The humans were from a death world. That explained everything. The strength, the speed, the weapons, the military training. They had evolved in hell and learned to thrive there. No wonder the Galactic Union had quarantined them. No wonder they were kept secret. Species like this could upset the entire balance of power in the galaxy. He looked at Commander Grant with new understanding. She was not cruel or evil. She was just a product of her environment. She had done what humans do best, which was survive against impossible odds, and now she had used those survival skills to save people she had never met before. Commander Grant could see the fee. The journey to the nearest Galactic Union station took 3 days. During that time, the Viridians and humans learned about each other. Dr. Thross spent hours talking with Commander Grant and her officers. He asked them questions about Earth and they answered honestly. They told him about their wars, the terrible conflicts that had killed millions of people over the centuries. They told him about diseases and famines and natural disasters. They told him about the struggle to build a peaceful civilization on a world that seemed designed to kill them. Dr. Thross listened and felt sad for them. His own people had never known such suffering. The Viridians had evolved on a gentle world with mild weather and abundant food. They had never needed to fight because there was always enough for everyone. Commander Grant learned about the Galactic Union from Dr. Thross. He told her about the 847 member species, most of them peaceful and cooperative. He explained how the Union settled disputes through negotiation and trade rather than violence. He described their laws and customs, their economy, and their government. Grant listened carefully and took notes. This information would be valuable when Earth decided how to approach the Union. She also noticed something interesting. Dr. Thross seemed uncomfortable when she asked about military matters. The Union had peacekeeping forces, but they were designed more for show than for actual combat. They had never faced a serious threat, because most species were peaceful by nature. On the second day of the journey, Dr. Thross asked Commander Grant about the Krathax prisoners. What would happen to them? Grant explained that they would be turned over to Union authorities for trial. The evidence of their piracy was clear, and they would face justice under Union law. Dr. Thross seemed relieved by this answer. He had been worried that the humans might simply execute the prisoners. That was what the Krathax themselves would have done, but humans, despite their violent history, seemed to believe in rules and fair treatment. Grant saw his relief and understood what he had been thinking. She told him that humans had learned hard lessons about violence. They knew that cruelty only created more cruelty. Justice had to mean something more than revenge. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter faced a difficult decision. Commander Grant had revealed humanity's existence to aliens who would report back to their government. The original plan had been to observe and withdraw without making contact. But circumstances had changed, and now Earth needed to decide what to do next. Carter called an emergency meeting with the Unified Command. The debate was intense. Some argued that the Viridians should be detained until humanity was ready for full contact. Others said that such action would make humans look like the bad guys. The compromise they reached was risky but necessary. Humanity would proceed with first contact, but on their own terms. Commander Grant would escort the Viridians to the Union station and present Earth's case for membership. Admiral Carter sent the orders to Commander Grant, along with detailed instructions. Grant was authorized to speak on behalf of Earth and negotiate with the Union authorities. She would be humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy. It was a huge responsibility, and Grant felt the weight of it. Everything she said and did would shape how hundreds of alien species viewed her entire race. She spent the rest of the journey preparing. She studied Union law and customs. She practiced her speeches. She tried to anticipate every question and concern the aliens might have. Lieutenant Torres helped her prepare by playing the role of difficult questioners. Together, they worked through dozens of scenarios. Gateway Station appeared on the view screen like a massive wheel turning slowly in space. It was 10 times bigger than anything humans had built. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Dr. Thross explained that Gateway served as a hub for this region of the galaxy. Ships came here to trade, refuel, and transfer passengers. The station also housed administrative offices for the Union government. When the Harmony's light approached with its unexpected military escort, it attracted immediate attention. Station Control sent multiple messages asking for identification and explanation. Dr. Thross responded, telling them about the pirate attack and the rescue by an unknown species. The response from the station was stunned silence. Station Commander Zephyrim was having a normal day until the report came through. He was a cautious bureaucrat from the Delphian species, known for following rules and avoiding problems. But this situation did not fit into any of his procedures. An unknown species with advanced military technology had appeared in Union space, destroyed a Krathax warship, and rescued Viridian scientists. The implications were enormous. Zephyrim read Dr. Thross's initial report 3 times, hoping it would start making more sense. It did not. He ordered the human vessel to maintain a safe distance from the station while he investigated. Then he sent urgent messages to his superiors at Union headquarters. News of the incident spread through the station faster than Zephyrim could control it. Within hours, every ship docked at Gateway knew about the mysterious humans. The reactions varied. Some species were curious and wanted to meet these newcomers. Others were frightened by reports of their military capabilities. The Krathax crime syndicate was embarrassed and angry. One of their ships had been defeated easily by an unknown enemy. This made them look weak. The syndicate's leaders met in secret and discussed their response. They could not let this insult stand. They would have to strike back somehow, to maintain their reputation. But first they needed to learn more about these humans and find their weaknesses. Dr. Thross submitted his full report to Station Commander Zephyrim. It included detailed scans of human biology, measurements of their technology, and information about Earth's environment. He also included his own observations about human behavior and culture. The report was thorough and objective, but it painted a picture that troubled many who read it. Humans were strong and resilient. They had weapons far beyond Union standards. They had a history of violence, but also a capacity for cooperation and compassion. They were, in short, exactly the kind of species that the Union had tried to avoid. Dangerous enough to be a threat, but noble enough to be potential allies. The Galactic Union Council convened an emergency session to discuss the human situation. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in their chambers on the capital world of Concordia. The debate lasted for 2 full days. Some species, particularly those who had suffered from Krathax raids, viewed humans as potential protectors. They argued that the Union needed strong allies who could actually fight when necessary. Other species feared that admitting humans would change the Union's fundamental character. They worried about arms races and military buildups. They worried that human presence would make the galaxy less safe, not more. The Council could not reach a consensus, so they decided to meet the humans personally before making any decision. Commander, Grant received an official invitation from the High Chancellor of the Galactic Union. She was invited to present humanity's case before the full Council on Concordia. The invitation was polite but formal. Grant understood that this was both an opportunity and a test. She would be the first human to speak to the galactic government. Her words would determine whether Earth was welcomed as a friend or isolated as a threat. She accepted the invitation and began preparing for the most important speech of her life. Earth sent her additional support, including cultural advisors and legal experts, but everyone knew that the final responsibility rested on Grant's shoulders. The Vengeance left Gateway Station and headed toward Concordia. The journey would take 2 weeks, giving Grant more time to prepare. She worked constantly, reviewing materials and practicing her presentation. Lieutenant Torres tried to make her rest, but she refused. This was too important. One night, unable to sleep, Grant stood in the observation deck and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue planet where humans had struggled and survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Now those humans were about to join a galactic civilization. Grant wondered if they were ready. She wondered if the galaxy was ready for them. Dr. Thross traveled with the human ship, serving as an informal advisor. He had grown to like Commander Grant and her crew. They were good people, despite coming from such a harsh world. He wanted to help them succeed. One evening, he sat with Grant in her ready room and gave her advice about the Council. He told her which species were likely to support humanity and which ones would oppose them. He explained the political alliances and voting blocs. He warned her about representatives who might try to trap her with difficult questions. Grant listened carefully and thanked him. She asked him why he was helping them so much. Dr. Thross thought for a moment before answering. He said that the galaxy needed people like humans, people who would actually respond when someone called for help, people who understood that sometimes peace required strength. Concordia appeared on the view screen like a jewel hanging in space. The capital world was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents. Orbital stations surrounded it, and ships moved in carefully controlled patterns. Everything about the planet spoke of order and civilization. Grant felt nervous as the Vengeance approached. This was it. This was the moment that would change every. The council chambers were larger than any building Commander Grant had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that she could barely see it. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in curved rows that rose like steps toward the walls. Each species had its own section with seats designed for their particular body type. Some looked almost human, while others were completely alien. Grant saw beings made of crystal, beings that floated in tanks of liquid, beings covered in fur or scales or smooth skin. She walked toward the center of the chamber where a single platform waited. Every eye in the room was watching her. The weight of their attention was almost physical. High Chancellor Solathar called the session to order. She was an ethereal, a species known for living hundreds of years and accumulating great wisdom. Her voice was calm and measured as she explained the purpose of this hearing. A new species had appeared in Union space with advanced military technology. They had defeated a Krathax warship and rescued Viridian scientists. Now they sought membership in the Galactic Union. The Council would hear their case and then vote on whether to accept them. Solothar looked directly at Commander Grant and invited her to speak. Grant took a deep breath and began. Grant spoke clearly and honestly. She introduced herself and explained where humans came from. She described Earth not hiding its harsh nature but explaining how it had shaped humanity. She talked about the high gravity that made humans stronger, the oxygen-rich atmosphere that gave them stamina, the predators that taught them to cooperate, the diseases that forced them to develop medicine, the natural disasters that taught them engineering. She admitted that humans had a violent history, but she framed it in context. Violence was not something humans enjoyed. It was something they had learned to use when survival demanded it. And over time they had learned to control it and use it more wisely. The council listened in silence. Some representatives leaned forward with interest. Others looked skeptical or afraid. Grant continued her speech, addressing the concerns she knew they would have. Yes, humans had powerful weapons, but they also had strong moral codes about when and how to use those weapons. Yes, they had fought wars among themselves, but they had also built a unified government that had maintained peace on Earth for over a century. Yes, they came from a dangerous world, but that made them uniquely qualified to protect others from danger. Grant reminded the council of why they were here. Humans had answered a distress call from strangers. They had risked revealing themselves to save people they had never met. That said something about their character. When Grant finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then the questions began. Representative Kelvath, speaking for a coalition of pacifist species, stood and challenged her. He argued that admitting humanity would fundamentally change the Union's peaceful nature. Other species might feel threatened and begin militarizing in response. This could lead to an arms race and eventually conflict. He asked Grant directly if she could guarantee that humans would never use their military power to threaten other Union members. Grant answered honestly. She could not guarantee anything about an entire species, but she could point to Earth's actions so far. They had not attacked anyone. They had only defended those who could not defend themselves. That was what they intended to continue doing. Other representatives raised concerns about human expansionism. They pointed to Earth's history of colonization and conquest. What would stop humans from taking over other worlds once they were part of the Union? Grant acknowledged this history, but explained how humans had learned from their mistakes. They had seen the harm that colonization caused and had developed international laws to prevent it. Earth would respect the sovereignty of other worlds. They sought partnership, not dominance. She could see that some representatives were convinced by her words while others remained doubtful. The debate continued for hours, with different species raising different concerns. Then Dr. Thross stood and asked permission to speak. High Chancellor Solothar granted it with some surprise. Dr. Thross walked to the center of the chamber and stood beside Commander Grant. He told the council about his experience with humans. He admitted that his first reaction to meeting them was fear. They were so strong, so capable, so comfortable with violence. But during the journey to Gateway Station, he had learned something important. Humans did not glory in violence. They used it as a tool reluctantly when necessary. They preferred peace but were prepared for war. More importantly, they had values that aligned with the Union's ideals: justice, fairness, protection of the weak. They just had the ability to actually enforce those values. Dr. Thross continued speaking, and his words carried weight because he had no reason to favor humans. He was simply telling the truth as he saw it. He explained that his species, the Viridians, had lived in peace for thousands of years precisely because they never faced real threats. When the Krathax attacked, they were completely helpless. The Union's peacekeeping forces were too far away and too weak to help. If humans had not responded to their distress call, Dr. Thross and his crew would be slaves right now or dead. The galaxy needed protectors, and humanity had proven they would answer when called. Dr. Thross sat down, and Grant felt gratitude toward him. His testimony might make all the difference. The debate continued for 3 more days. Grant answered hundreds of questions and addressed dozens of concerns. She met privately with various representatives, building relationships and seeking support. Some species were easy to convince. Those who had suffered from piracy or other crimes saw humans as potential allies. Others were harder. The pacifist species genuinely feared what human membership might mean for the Union's character. Grant listened to their concerns and tried to find common ground. She proposed oversight mechanisms and reporting requirements. She suggested that Earth could share certain technologies with the Union, particularly in medicine and engineering, as a gesture of goodwill. Finally, High Chancellor Solathar called for a final session. She had listened to all the arguments and consulted with the various factions. Now she proposed a compromise. Humanity would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Union for a period of 50 years. During this time, they would be subject to regular inspections and oversight. They would contribute to Union defense initiatives but be restricted from forming a large standing military within Union space. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign world with the right to self-defense. In exchange, humanity would share certain technologies and participate in cultural exchange programs. It was not everything Grant had hoped for, but it was fair. The council prepared to vote. Grant stood in the center of the chamber and waited. She thought about Earth and all the people watching from home. She thought about the crew of the Vengeance who had trusted her to represent them well. She thought about the future and all the possibilities that hung in the balance. High Chancellor Solathar called for the vote, and the representatives began indicating their choices. Green lights appeared on the board for yes votes and red lights for no. Grant watched as the lights accumulated, her heart beating fast. The count seemed to take forever. When the final tally appeared, Grant felt relief wash over her. 73.4% had voted in favor. It was just barely above the required 70% supermajority, but it was enough. Humanity was officially welcomed into the Galactic Union. The chamber erupted with mixed reactions. Some representatives applauded while others sat in silence. High Chancellor Solathar stood and made the announcement official. She invited Commander Grant to accept on behalf of Earth. Grant stepped forward and spoke the words that would echo through human history. She accepted the provisional membership and pledged that Earth would honor the responsibilities that came with it. She promised that humans would be good neighbors and strong allies. As the session ended and representatives began leaving the chamber, Grant received a private message on her communicator. It was from a species she had not heard speak during the debates. The Korath, warriors from a high-gravity world who served as unofficial protectors for the Union. Their message was simple but powerful. "Welcome, cousins. We have been alone for too long." Grant smiled as she read it. Perhaps humans would not be as isolated as she had feared. Perhaps there were others in the galaxy who understood what it meant to come from a harsh world and choose to use that strength for good. Grant contacted Admiral Carter on Earth and gave her the news. The celebration on Earth was immediate and loud. People poured into the streets of cities around the world, cheering and crying with joy. Humanity had joined the galactic community. They were no longer alone in the universe. But Grant knew that this was just the beginning. The hard work of building relationships and proving themselves worthy of trust still lay ahead. She looked around the empty council chamber and felt the weight of responsibility. She had spoken for all of humanity today. Now humanity would have to live up to the promises she had made. 3 months after the council vote, Commander Grant found herself promoted to Admiral and living on Concordia. The human embassy was still being built, but the temporary facilities were adequate. Her staff had grown to include diplomats, military liaisons, scientists, and cultural advisors. Every day brought new challenges as Earth integrated into the Union. Some Union species welcomed humans eagerly, while others remained cautious. Grant spent most of her time in meetings, negotiating trade agreements, discussing security protocols, and trying to build trust. It was exhausting work, but important. Every positive interaction made the next one easier. The Krathax crime syndicate had not forgotten their humiliation. They waited 3 months before striking back, planning carefully this time. They identified 3 human cargo ships traveling through Union space and coordinated simultaneous attacks. The pirates expected another easy victory. They were wrong. Each cargo ship now traveled with a human destroyer as escort. When the Krathax attacked, they were met with overwhelming force. 2 pirate ships were destroyed and 1 was captured intact. The captured crew faced trial under Union law, and this time the evidence was recorded in detail. The galaxy watched as the Krathax were held accountable for their crimes. The message was clear. Attacking human vessels was not profitable anymore. The Union Council approached Admiral Grant with an interesting proposal. For decades, pirates and raiders had operated with relative freedom in the outer regions of Union space. The peacekeeping forces were designed for deterrence, not combat. They could respond to emergencies but rarely caught criminals before they escaped. Would humanity be willing to form the core of a new rapid response fleet? The mission would be to patrol dangerous areas, respond to distress calls quickly, and actively hunt down criminal organizations. Grant listened to the proposal carefully. She knew this was a test. The Union was asking humans to become their military arm. It was both an honor and a burden. Grant contacted Earth's government to discuss the proposal. The debate was long and complex. Some officials worried that taking on this role would confirm everyone's fears about humans being too militaristic. Others argued that this was exactly why Earth had joined the Union in the first place, to help protect peaceful species who could not protect themselves. The compromise they reached satisfied most concerns. Earth would participate in the Rapid Response Fleet, but only under strict rules of engagement. The fleet would include representatives from multiple Union species, not just humans. All actions would be reviewed by Union oversight committees. And the fleet's primary mission would be defense and law enforcement, not conquest or intimidation. Admiral Grant worked closely with the Korath to establish the new fleet. She had met their representatives several times since the council vote and found them surprisingly easy to work with. The Korath came from a world with gravity even higher than Earth's. They understood humans in ways the peaceful species could not. They had also struggled with being seen as too dangerous, too violent, too different. Together, humans and Korath formed the backbone of the Rapid Response Fleet. They recruited from other Union members who were willing to serve in a more active defense role. Species who had suffered from piracy were especially eager to volunteer. Slowly, the fleet took shape. The flagship of the new fleet was a joint construction called Unity's Shield. It combined human weapons technology, Korath armor systems, and propulsion designs from a dozen other species. The ship was massive, capable of carrying fighters and support craft. It had medical facilities that could treat patients from any Union species. It had conference rooms designed for diplomatic negotiations. And it had enough firepower to defeat a small army. The Unity Shield was both a warship and a symbol. It represented what the Union could accomplish when different species worked together toward a common goal. Captain Jake Peterson was given command, promoted from his position at Titan Watch. The Rapid Response Fleet's first major operation targeted a Krathax stronghold in the Helios Expanse. Intelligence reports indicated that the pirates had enslaved thousands of people from various species there. They used the slaves for labor in illegal mining operations. The stronghold was heavily defended with multiple warships and orbital weapons platforms. Captain Peterson planned the assault carefully, consulting with Korath tactical experts and human strategists. They would need speed and overwhelming force to succeed. The attack began at dawn local time. Fighters launched from the Unity Shield and struck the orbital platforms first. The main fleet followed, engaging the Krathax warships. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Krathax fought harder than expected, defending their stronghold with desperation. But the combined human and Korath forces were too strong and too well coordinated. One by one, the pirate ships were disabled or destroyed. The orbital platforms were neutralized. Marine teams boarded the main facility and secured it section by section. They found the slaves in terrible conditions, malnourished and abused. The medical teams immediately began providing care while security teams searched for any remaining pirates. By the end of the day, the stronghold was liberated. 3,000 slaves were freed and the Krathax leadership was captured. The operation was broadcast across the Union, and the message resonated clearly. The days of preying on the weak were ending. Back on Earth, humanity struggled with its new role in the galactic community. Thousands of humans volunteered for Union service, eager to explore the stars and help other species. Universities created new programs to study alien cultures and languages. Companies began trading with Union partners, exchanging goods and technologies. The cultural exchange was not always smooth. Humans found some Union customs strange and sometimes frustrating. The emphasis on consensus over quick decision-making seemed inefficient. The reluctance to use force even when clearly justified seemed naive. But humans were learning. They were adapting their approaches to work within Union norms while still maintaining their own identity. Union species also struggled to understand humans. They found human entertainment disturbingly violent. Action movies that humans considered mild seemed horrific to species who had never experienced war. Human history books read like nightmare stories to people from peaceful worlds. Even human children's stories often involved conflict and danger. But slowly, understanding grew. The Union species began to see that humans did not enjoy violence. They just accepted it as part of life. And they had developed sophisticated moral frameworks for when and how violence was acceptable. These frameworks were actually more advanced than what most Union species had because humans had needed them more. 6 months into humanity's membership, something changed everything. Union sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The signatures did not match any known species. The fleet was enormous, hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation. They were heading directly toward Union space with clear purpose. High Chancellor Solothar convened an emergency session of the Council. Admiral Grant attended along with representatives from every member species. The mood in the chamber was tense and fearful. Many species had never faced a military threat of this scale. They did not know how to respond. Some suggested trying to communicate with the unknown fleet. Others wanted to evacuate border worlds. The debate went in circles. Admiral Grant finally stood and asked for permission to speak. High Chancellor Solothar recognized her immediately. Grant looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces. She understood their fear. Most of these species had never experienced war. They had no framework for understanding what might be coming, but Grant did. Humans had fought wars for thousands of years. They understood strategy and tactics and the psychology of conflict. Grant spoke calmly but firmly. She reminded the Council why humanity had been accepted into the Union. Not just because humans were strong, but because they knew how to use that strength responsibly. She told them that humans and their allies would stand between the unknown threat and the peaceful worlds of the Union. That was what Deathworlders did. They protected those who could not protect themselves. Grant proposed a unified defense initiative. Every Union species would contribute according to their capabilities. Those with advanced sensors would form an early warning network. Those with industrial capacity would produce supplies and equipment. Those with medical expertise would prepare field hospitals, and those with military capabilities would form the frontline defense. The proposal required resources from everyone but placed the greatest burden on humans and Korath. Grant acknowledged this but argued it was fair. Species that had evolved to fight should bear the responsibility of fighting. The peaceful species had other valuable contributions to make. The Council debated for hours but finally agreed. They authorized the formation of a unified defense force with Grant as its commander. Earth mobilized immediately. Every warship in the human fleet was assigned to the defense force. Admiral Carter contacted Grant with a personal message. She told Grant that Earth was proud of her. Everything Grant had worked for, everything she had promised to the Council was about to be tested. Carter ended the message with simple words. Do what humans do best, survive and protect others. Grant felt the weight of responsibility be.